Good evening. Today we will start working on a project for Tiki Interlibrary by building a calculator. So far we discussed just a few basic widgets, buttons, entry forms, labels, and actually it's sufficiently enough to start building such a program. And really we're trying to input data, manipulate, and output. And I mean, it's a real working program. Today we'll just start working on the layout of our calculator and let's start working on it. So let me share my screen. So we will discuss this, but this is the first part of our program. If we run, this is how our calculator will look like. It's a very basic calculator, but we can maximize it. But so far, for window, we will just create this basic layout for today. As you can see, so far we just work and concentrate on the buttons, the layout, and we will use the Windows calculator as our layout guide. But ours will be very, very basic, so we can concentrate working to work on our widgets. Now, before we need to create a separate file, and let me actually delete this code. And always we start from import. Actually, we'll do from tkinter import. And first, we need to declare a window. We do our root tk. And of course, the last line we put the root for the main loop. For the main loop, for GUI basically to run and layout for everything to go smoothly. If we click File, we click Save All, and we run just our calculator file. And don't forget, when you open a new project, you just create a separate file. We already know from other lessons, you can right-click on main or on the area of project and select new Python file. So we click Run. And so far, we just have a window. We got a window. Now let's create a title. Let's create a title, and we'll just say root title, and let's call it Magic Calculator. We click File. Here it is. Save, and we run our file. And as you can see, once we have our window, we got the title for Magic Calculator. Now, once we have the title, let's create the entry form, basically where we have to put our numbers, to add numbers. Let's do to add numbers. So, but we need that entry form. So we say main entry. Let's call it main entry. Of course, we always know it's a root, the main window we have to run. Then we say, how about width of our entry form to be 40? Okay. And how border width to be 5? Okay. And of course, if we want to check and see how our looks like our entry form, we have to, for now, let's just utilize spec. Remember that we define a widget and we talked about pack it or throw it. And um, the tkinter is supposed to pack it exactly what we created on our window. So far, just the entry field. So if we run it, we may get an error. It's invalid syntax. Remember, syntax is important. We have to put border width, the equal sign. So we file, we click save all, run again, and it's still invalid syntax. Okay, so why do we have still invalid syntax? And it says line 4. Okay. We did not declare what kind of widget it is. It's very important. We have to say entry. Now Python knows it's an entry. Without entry, the Python has no idea what we just created. So it's a main entry variable for the entry field with the root window, the width and border width 5. And now it's highlighted in color because the Python knows parameters for such a widget to accept. So we click File, we click Save, and we run this file. And let's see. Oh, look at this. We have exactly enough what is necessary for our calculator to pack it. We got our entry field. Now let's create the buttons. Now, in one of the lessons we talk about grid, other way to do the layout. It is explained in detail. You can reference to this lesson, but basically in our layout we have like we got the rows, we got columns, and if we start from left top corner, we got basically 0, 1, 2 terms of columns, and from rows we got 0, 1, 2, 3. So by utilizing like a grid, we can kind of say how many columns, how many rows, where each button is, because we need multiple buttons, right? Okay, so the next line, let's do this. We say main entry, our already created field, grid, and we say we want to have a row starting with 0. We want to have column to have with 0 started to start, and column span for 3. So basically we saying we want to have 3 buttons with rows and columns. And with its grid itself for pad X, let's say 10, and pad Y 10. Now, the next lesson, the next part of a program, let's create the buttons. Create buttons. And of course, we utilize from our previous lesson button first underscore. Button. Oh, here it is. Button first. And for my button, I want to have root for my primary window. I would like text to create my first button for my calculator 1. For the button itself, let's say I want my pad X, let's say to be 40, and pad Y, let's say to be 20. And at some point we need to talk about command, because my button have to have a function in order when I click on it, it must perform some action. And it will be a button add. We're not discussing so far buttons, functions. We're working on utilizing, creating our layout. But this is only one button, but we got multiple. So we can just, for our program, we can copy and paste. It will be second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, and 0. So let's just change to second button, third, okay, then 4, 5, okay, 6, 7, okay, 8, 9, and 0. Remember, we have a 0. If we use our calculator, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. This is what we're working on. Now we need to change the names. We need to match, right? We got button second, button third, button fourth, button fifth, button sixth, button seventh, button eighth, button ninth, button tenth. Okay. So we got 10 button. Actually, not the tenth. Let's call it 0. The 0 button, actually. Okay. So we created button. Now let's attach it in terms of output, right? Because remember, we create a widget and we layout, and we use the grid instead of pack at this time. So layout of buttons. Layout. Okay. Look, we're already on line 19 of our program. Okay. So for layout, this is what we do. We say button first grid. Okay. We put row. We will work on the numbers in a moment. And column. And now remember, we got 10 buttons, right? So we have to do the same for the grid. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and the last one for our calculator, it's a 0. Okay, now we need to update the names. It's exactly the same process. This is the button second. This is the button third. This is the button fourth. This is the button fifth. This is the button sixth. This is the button seventh. This is the button eighth. nines, and 0. So we got our eights. Yeah, we got our. Now the question is, how do we lay out? If we look here, and let's ignore this for now. If we start this from top, we actually got, let's say this is the top, we got 0 row, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. So 7, 8, 9, it starts with the first row. Actually, not from 0, from first row. Let's start. So we start from first row, first, second, and third. So our 7, 8, and 9. So our 7 will be the first row, right? So we got 1, 1, 1, and 1. Once again, because this is the first row. And of course, we got 0, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, how about the next row? It's a second row, 0, 1, 2. The same process, 4, 5, 6. 4. So we got second row, 5, second row, 6, second row, and the same, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The position on that row, right? And on the top, actually on the bottom, we have third row with columns 0, 1, 2. 0, 1, 2 for the buttons 1, 2, 3. So we got third column, third row, and the same process for columns. 1, 2, 3. Okay. How about the 0 group? For the button 0, we put fourth row, and we can put the column. How about 0? So it will be the first column, and it will be located right here. The rest will be for maybe add button. Okay, so we created our grid for the layout of buttons, and we created our buttons and for the grid. So now we click File, Save All, and we run the program itself. And now we have an error. It says button first is not defined. And this is for the button first command line 8. So line 8, and of course we have on every line, but this is where it starts. We need to define. We don't have to really work on it how it does it, but we still have to define as a function. So we say button add. Wait, let's make sure we do it correctly. Remember, for the function, we have to put the column. Okay, now we just say return photo now. We don't have to say what to return because we're not working on the logic or how the button works, but we did define the function. Now Python knows inside of the button itself, it knows. Okay. Now, I think there is an error here because technically we say button first, but did we really define the button as a label? No, we did not, because we have to say a button, and we can do a check button. So we have to define a label. We have to define a widget. It's very important. So let's do this. Button class. Button class. Button class. Let's see. It's a regular button class because there are different buttons, as you can see. Button class. Button class. Button class. Okay, so we got our buttons defined. We got our grid defined and the function. Okay, so we go to File, Save All, Calculator, and we run. And look at this. Now, we got this, we got this. Now, why do we have this here? Remember we got column 1, 2, 3, right? But here we got column 0. We defined all these buttons from column 1, 2, 3, but this one we defined at 0. If we go here, see all these columns, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and somehow we got this 0. If we put 1 here, and let's click Save All, and run the file. Now it will try to pack it, and we still got some space, which is okay for design. I think it's a good idea on calculator to have some spacing, so we can perform some action. We got some space. Actually, we can do background for our calculator, which is okay too. We can say maybe different background color also. So we can add some, but the field is okay too to me. I think it's okay design. It's really up to us. We can do like this and leave some space here. Maybe we'll add some additional features for our project. Maybe turn on and off. So I think it looks okay so far. So once again, we created our field for the number. We created so far the numbers. Now we need to create the add function in order to be able to display it. We also need to make this function to work so we can actually do some real calculations, and we will cover this for our next chapter, for our next lesson. Okay, thank you so much.